Welcome everybody to the big show. Today we're going to talk about something that I get asked all the time. What is it that service advisors do? Do I need service advisors? Can I replace my service advisors with a kiosk? We're going to go in depth on what the role of the service advisor is and what winning and losing is for that position. Also, we're going to talk about the news and why I don't want you to call us about service advisor training. I'm Chris Collins. This is Christian.
Hey, I was going to tell you something. I forgot before we started rolling, but I was out and about yesterday. You know, just meandering about the city.
Walking around the city?
Walking around. And I met a microbiologist. Much taller than I thought.
That took me a second. That and much more coming up on Service Drive Revolution. Christian, before we get to the news, let's inform our audience of something strategic that could save you time and frankly save us a lot of time.
I like it.
Don't call us for advisor training.
Oh.
We have advisor training. We sell advisor training, but don't call us for advisor training. I've yet to have anybody call us for advisor training that needed advisor training.
That's really true. That's a good point.
It's happened to me so many times over the last couple weeks that I get on a strategy session and they're like, they just want advisor training, and I'm looking at their thing. And so here's what it says. And I'm going to tell you what you need, and it's not advisor training, but let me go through the pain of this story really quick. Booked out 10 days. Next appointment is 10 days out. Now I am seeing recently customers are next day now because traffic is starting to drop. Remember, I told everybody traffic's going to drop. It's starting to happen already. I'm seeing it already. But booked out 10 days. In the last month, they've sold 6 alignments. So let's say they're writing 1,200 customer pay ROs. They've sold 6 alignments.
And 5 of those people hit curbs and asked for the alignments?
Or they're internal.
Oh yeah, they sold 1 to sales. That's pretty good.
Right? So they're booked out and they're not selling anything.
Yeah.
And the thought is if our advisors were just better, if our advisors knew how to sell, that's not why your advisors aren't selling.
Not if you're 10 days out.
Your advisors aren't selling because you can't get the work done and you need to hire 10 technicians. I mean, I don't think we've gone into a store or had a store come into the coaching group that doesn't need to hire 3 at a minimum. But what was in the Monday meeting, the BMW store, how many techs?
We've added 15 and counting.
15 techs in 45 days or how long?
It was about 60. But
60 days, so in 2 months. And frankly, we can do it faster than that.
Well, we've done some stuff in that store that allows us to go even faster.
Yeah, but you need technicians, you need the production. So then the other thing that then they'll say, well, our techs could be more efficient.
For sure.
No.
I think that we can get everyone that's at 100% to 300%.
I wouldn't spend time on that. I'd spend time on hiring technicians. You need techs. So now, if you're landlocked, you don't have enough stalls, we can help you with that. We can figure that out. If you need help hiring technicians, which you do, everybody needs technicians, and we can help you. We're really good at hiring technicians. We can help you with that. But if we train the advisors, they're just going to be suicidal because they can't get the work done that they're going to sell. The advisor training is last. The first thing is you got to hire techs. The second thing is we got to fix the system because the systems are antiquated. Then we'll train the advisors.
Yeah, that's just a little piece of it. The whole thing sounds like a nightmare. Like last night, I had a dream that I was a muffler. I woke up exhausted.
This is a great segue. Why don't we just go to the news now?
8.6 miles per gallon. Is it a semi-truck? Is it a Boeing 747? Is it a tank? No. It's the next generation of USPS mail trucks. That's right. The next gen USPS mail trucks are only capable of 8.6 miles per gallon, EPA says.
Which is up from the previous generation that was 8.2 miles per gallon.
Miles ahead, no pun intended, of where it was.
So it's funny, they pushed this thing through our beautiful, was it Congress that signed off on the post office getting, is it between 50,000 and 160,000 new vehicles, and only 10% of them are electric. The rest of them are basically the most inefficient, gas guzzling.
Yeah, but the propaganda was it was going to be an electric fleet. Yeah. I totally remember that thing. And it was like, oh, we're going to have so many electric cars, and then 10%.
Well, they could just raise our taxes.
I can only hope. I can only hope. But yeah, so that's a big whoopsie. 8.6 miles per gallon, like that's nothing.
What does like a aircraft carrier get?
I don't know. It can't be good. I mean, those things are monstrosities.
But do you think it's more or less than that?
I feel like it's probably even less than that. I would say that it's probably gallons per mile on those kinds of things.
You know what's unique about those?
Aircraft carriers or USPS trucks?
USPS trucks. I know this because my mom worked for the USPS.
That they have the steering wheel on the other side.
Oh, good job. Yeah. See, when you tell a joke, do I guess at the punchline?
Yeah, sometimes.
No, I don't. I just take it.
I disagree with that, but it's okay. I like it. Ready for another story?
I'm not going to ask any questions anymore. What's the next story?
Are we having a tiff? This is kind of fun. All right.
I'm having a moment.
So obviously, you know, this podcast is wide-reaching, right?
Yeah, we get big numbers.
Huge numbers, but also...
Would you say that we have the biggest numbers in the industry? We have no way of knowing, really.
It's definitely on the rumor mill that we
have a lot of downloads. We have a lot of very nice people that support us.
It's a lot of fun. It's pretty cool, but I did not expect this. You know who's been listening to our podcast? Little company in Seattle, Starbucks.
What?
Yeah. So, Volvo to charge up EV drivers at 15 Starbucks shops. Remember that little conversation we had not too long ago?
Making service departments a destination, make it easy for people to charge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it just shows you we're onto something, right? Because Starbucks gets it.
Yeah, Starbucks gets it. Volvo gets it. They know that they got to have experiences and destinations, but I feel like this is really kind of that's progressive and scattered across a 1,350-mile route from Denver to Seattle. So essentially, you could it's encouraging the road trip. That makes a lot of sense.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's really cool and progressive. But
and it too, it's also just creating a narrative for customers. Like they think about that as, oh, I should take a road trip. It's an experience. You know, they're making it fun because, like I've told you before, like I would love to take the Tesla in the summer and go to Vegas together and experience the little restaurant or whatever that halfway there you recharge on a fast charger.
Yep, in Barstow.
Yeah. But you think about it as, oh, this is something I want to do because you have to stop versus something that you're scared to do.
Yeah, that's so great. I just think it's progressive, and it's definitely thinking about what to do with that, 45 minutes to hour time when you're charging. And it's funny how fast it goes sometimes when you're out on the road and you're charging. Like you look down and there's a lot of times where the charging stations for Tesla are in malls. And it's like you go down, you go to one store and you look at your watch, it's already time to go back. It's faster than you might think.
So let's talk about the big topic. And I'm excited to talk about this because I feel like it's something that is widely misunderstood. And I think a lot of Band-Aids have been put on this, but nobody really talks about, like, what does a service advisor do? What is the purpose? And we do have, like, a narrative in our industry where people will say, service advisors are salespeople. And I'm always like, service advisors are not salespeople. They're customer collectors. They're not salespeople. If you've ever written service, selling is the easiest part. I mean, you talk about your customers are given to you. You don't have to prospect.
Yeah.
they're showing up, right? Like for the most part.
In some cases, more than you can handle.
Yeah. So you got customers. Like a real true salesperson would have to prospect customers, but they're opening the doors and you're writing them up. Maybe you make an appointment, but you're certainly not going out and selling the car or truck and then servicing it. So you're not really selling. Second of all, what they need.
Yeah.
It's not like they're coming in and saying, I need an oil change or I need whatever. Now, we might recommend additional things, but once again, it's easy. They need it. Like I always find it fascinating when you call on declines. You call a customer and you're like, hey, I see that you were in here last week and we recommended brakes. And I'm just curious, did you take it somewhere else? And true to NADA's research every time, the reason why people don't do it is they were not told or they did not understand. But most of the time the customer is like, oh, I didn't know that. So we put it on the RO, but we didn't actually tell the customer. Number two, they showed up and we told them. So they were already planning on picking it up, right? But it isn't because they don't want the brakes. It isn't because of the price. But perception is that. And so what does a service advisor do? And the outcome of a good service advisor is that they're a customer collector and that customers are coming back to them, coming back to where they work in the process. But let's just talk about the role of a service advisor. How did it come about? And what is important about it in the overall scheme of things. So if we talk about just the origin story of how service advisors came about and what the thought process was behind it is, early on you had customers pulling right in and dealing directly with the technician.
Right.
Now the customers dealing directly with the technician was good in the sense that the communication of what was needed was clear because you didn't have somebody in the middle. Right?
Yeah, that you weren't losing communication even a little bit.
But everything else about it was inefficient because the technician now is not working on a vehicle. They're dealing with the customer, right? If if you're a good technician and you want to flag time, any rapport building, any, longer conversations than 30 seconds is costing you money, right? So it's very inefficient. In the fact that what we're selling in a service department is time. That's our product. And just like flowers or eggs or milk, that thing can go bad and you're never getting it back. Once it's spoiled, it's spoiled. So time is an irreplenishable resource. Once it's gone, it's gone. Same thing with rotten milk.
Yuck.
It's trying to give you that mental.
Oh, and no, it was a smell.
So to increase the efficiency of the technicians and keep them working on the vehicles, we added this layer of expense called a service advisor. Now it is an additional layer of expense, but the thought at the time, I can only assume, was it will more than pay for itself because the technicians will be more productive and the customers will have a better experience. It's worth the expense. So most service advisors and most service departments are paid a commission on the work that they create, write, however you want to look at it, but they're paid a percentage of either the sales or the gross. Sometimes they might have some sort of salary, but it's very rare that a service advisor is not compensated on their individual performance. Now that part is closer to a salesperson in a sense.
Yeah.
Right? But they're performance-based in that. But the idea is that the advisor is going to make that whole process better, right? So the first part of this, which kind of touched on, that an advisor does is it's about communication. And it's communication both ways. It's communicating to the customer and it's communicating what the customer needs to the technician. So they are a communicator. You came up with the word that I thought was really cool. You said they're scribes.
Yeah.
Explain what you meant by they're scribes.
So essentially their job is just to kind of take information, write it down, and then hand it off to the technician. So they're just kind of taking the story from the customer, writing it, and then giving that story to the technician. I used to say translator, but well, to a point though, what happened and what I found is when I was training advisors and saying you have to translate, what they would do is they would take the information from the customer, then kind of like self-diagnose and put that on the paper as opposed to actually just taking what the customer said and letting the technician do that work. And it would sometimes send the text down the wrong path because the advisor was putting their 2 cents onto the transcription.
Yeah. So customer is coming into the service department, advisor is meeting them and getting what needs to be done. And then the next one is they're recommending things that the customer might not be thinking about that they need as far as needed maintenance. Most of the time, you're just recommending maintenance because an advisor wouldn't know much more than that at the time. But they're documenting the customer's needs. So if the customer says, I have a rattle or my car cuts out at this certain time, they need to get as much information as they can to make it easy for the technician to figure that out and diagnose it.
Yep.
So they might need to go for a ride with the customer, but whatever it is, they need to understand what it is so they can communicate it to the technician in a very effective way. Now, a lot of technicians will tell you that doesn't happen.
Not near as effectively as it should. You think about that, like the retelling of the story can take diagnosis from minutes to hours.
Yeah, and I have seen on ROs and not that long ago, rattles.
Rattle from rear.
Yeah, like that's the description. Rattle from the rear suspension, the rear interior, like, you know, the rear trunk, what, where? Like,
throw me a bone.
Yeah, so that can be a real inefficiency for the technicians if they're not provided with the right information. And so that's something that advisors should, you know, try really, really hard to be good at. And second of all, put your hands on the problem. Like if it's rattling, go for a ride. Make it, duplicate the problem. The thing I used to tell customers when I was an advisor, when they would have a rattle or whatever it is, I would say, understand there's this weird psychic phenomenon that happens, that there's this like 1 mile dome that comes over your vehicle. And whenever you're within a mile of us, the problem doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
Just to kind of plant the seed that, hey, it's, you know, a lot of times you hear the thing once and you think, oh, that's happening, but it isn't happening all the time. But your perception as a customer is that it's happening all the time, but it's hard to replicate. And so if we can't replicate it together, they're going to cut the technician a little more leeway because they understand they couldn't produce it on demand.
Right. Otherwise, they just think we didn't try hard enough. Yeah. You know what I used to do? That's kind of, I like how you said that, the 1 mile dome. I always used to say, so you know when your kid has a toothache and they're like, oh, Dad, my tooth, it hurts so bad. You finally go to the dentist and the toothache goes away. It's the same exact thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because customers would get frustrated. They'd be like, oh, it does this thing, and then you'd go for a ride with them and it doesn't do it, and then they'd be like, you know, and I would be, it's okay, like that happens.
Yeah.
But what I was really trying to say there is, listen, our techs they don't have crystal balls.
That's right.
So I have to be able to replicate it for them. So that's the communication part from the customer. Also communicating the expectations to the customer. So the service advisor's job is to also frame the customer what's going to happen, what can be expected, how the process is going to work right up front. And then communicate. So you got to communicate. We teach in our advisor training, you know, touch the customer when they don't need touched, when they don't expect it, because then it builds trust.
Yep. Outbound, not inbound.
If they got to call you, you lost.
Absolutely.
And it's funny, like, if, you know, in a service department, you can sit by the phones at lunch and tell how well managed it is and how good the advisors are by how many calls are coming in to check status.
So great.
Because if we're not getting to them before they call us, we lost. So the communication, follow-up, right? Then the advisor is managing the process.
Yeah.
And in some service departments, they're actually sourcing the parts. Like
certainly in your independent shop.
So you're managing the process. You might be dealing with an extended warranty. You might be deciding whether the work that's needed is covered under warranty or if the customer needs to pay for it, right? There's a lot of different things in the process that you're in control of. And, also offering the customer different options for things, for parts, the extended warranties. Might want to go one way. Like this would happen to me a lot where they wanted to send a used part, the extended warranty would. And I would tell the customer like, hey, they want to send a used part, but I wouldn't recommend that. And so, you're managing that process. You're also managing the technician's process in the sense that if a technician pulls a car and they have the diagnosis and they say, hey, this customer needs this and this and this, and you can't get a hold of the customer right away, then the tech's pulling that out and the next job that they have are pushing your job to the back of the line. Because the technicians are only effective if they're working and they can't sit around and wait for you to figure out how to get a hold of the customer. So how good are you at managing the process? You got to, right up front, where are you going to be today? What's the number I can reach you on? How do you want me to communicate?
Time sensitive.
You got to be ready to communicate with the customer if that is needed. Yeah. If communication is needed in that sense. But you're managing the process. The other thing you're doing as a service advisor is you're advising them. So you're advising them up front to the maintenance they might need, but you're also advising them to repairs that somebody might need on a car. And this will happen very frequently when you're a service advisor, is somebody will have an older car with a lot of miles on it that needs a lot of work and they can't afford that work. And you need to prioritize that work. So you might need to go back to the technician and say, hey, they don't have 2,500 right now, but what's important? And then discuss that with the technician and then tell the customer like, this is what's important today, but over time we should take care of these things. But when I was a service advisor, I would have customers coming back every payday to get a certain thing done to check off their list. But you have to prioritize, and in prioritizing, you got to see it from the customer's point of view and get the technician who's the expert's point of view. So you're in the middle of that process. And so the word that you came up kind of for that was liaison, right? They're a liaison in that sense. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was also like with the rest of the thing, I think I'd put down that like the advisor is the master of time and space, and so much of that stuff, like things can't happen without them actually kind of pulling different strings. And it's so vital, the way that behind the scenes they keep everything going.
And then the last one on the list, and this is not last because it's not the most important, because it is the most important, is you're a friend. A service advisor needs to be a friend to the customer. They need to feel like we care, like we're attentive to them, and that we want them back. Like we care about how they feel about the process. Like, I say this all the time, but I wouldn't recommend something to a customer that I wouldn't recommend to my mom. And so making them feel like a friend, making them feel like family is why you're there as a service advisor. And just think about this for a second, is if I could cut out that added expense in the financial statement, which usually ends up being 8 to 10% of the gross, right? If I could cut that out and save it, which in some dealerships or service departments can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. If I could cut that out and the customer would have a better experience, we don't need service advisors. And if you start from that perspective, that a service advisor's role is to make the whole process better, more effective, and the customer to want to come back, like and trust us. That's your role as a service advisor. It's a hard role. You got a lot, you got a lot to do there. You got to set the technician up for success. You got to build trust with the customer. You're juggling a lot of things all at once. It's a hard thing for an average person to be able to do all that in a day over and over and over again.
Yeah. There's no way you can go into it with half effort. You got to be all in on that thing. And I think that carrying the flag for the customer is like it's the best incentive to do the job really well.
Well, and I think the tech.
Oh, yeah.
Because like technicians know, like when a technician gets a certain advisor's job and they're like, oh, this guy, versus, oh, thank goodness I got Christian, right? Like technicians used to be really excited that I got there, that they got one of my ROs.
Because they knew you were going to sell work.
I was going to sell it and I was going to do whatever needed to be done to set them up. I was going to get them the description. I would call, I wasn't passive in my involvement in the transaction. It wasn't like, well, that's the tech's problem.
Yeah, so as an advisor, like the customer needs to be your biggest fan, a tech should be right behind that. Like always. And I think the thing that, I don't know, it's not always that a tech expects that you're going to sell everything, but by golly, they need an answer fast.
Well, if I didn't sell it, that's the other thing. I'd go back and tell them why. I would say they're trading it in or whatever, but I always wanted the technician to think that doing an inspection on a vehicle was not wasted when it was my RO.
So smart.
So a lot of times what happens is the tech never hears back from the advisor whether the work was declined or not, and then the car or truck just disappears, and they don't know, and so they think, oh, you didn't call.
And they wasted their time looking it over.
So I wanted to know I did call, and this is what was said, or this is why, or they're trading it in, or they don't have the money, or whatever it is, but I didn't want the technician to feel like it wasn't going to be presented. Because I think for a lot of technicians, if they know you're going to present it, they don't expect you to sell it every time. But when it really upsets them is when they've done the work to inspect and they put their effort in and you don't even try as an advisor, they get bitter. And it's demotivating.
Yeah.
It really is. So great stuff, but that's basically what a service advisor does and what's important about that role and how it works. Fun stuff. We appreciate you tuning in to the big show, and we will see you next time on Service Drive Revolution. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Service Drive Revolution. We're uploading new stuff every day, so make sure you subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss out. If you have a question you'd like us to answer on the show, call 8333-ASK-SDR and we'll answer your question on the show. That's 8333-ASK-SDR. For special deals on our books and training, head over to offers.chriscollinsinc.com. Now that's offers.chriscollinsinc.com. I'm Chris Collins, and I'll see you in the next video.